One of the major contributing factors that emotionally healthy people point back to is their experience with parents who were present in their lives. Painful, isn't it? But I bet for a lot of our kids, this is increasingly what their experience with parents is like. Come on, be honest. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you should see my kid. I don't even know what his face looks like anymore. All I ever see is the top of his head. I get it. But you know what? I don't care. We're not talking about your kid. You're the grown-up. Kids need your time. Remember, you're their hero. And the time you spend with them will help define who they become as adults. There's been a long debate by parenting experts about whether quality or quantity of time is more important. In my years of working with parents and kids, I know this to be true. They need both. There simply aren't any quick fixes. And we know that if we're really honest with ourselves. I know all of this can sound overwhelming. This idea of presence is such a big challenge to our priorities and selfishness.
Zorg is attacking the yellow Hexatron planet. Will you come play with me?
I knew I was selfish before I had kids. I really did. I went from being single and selfish to getting married, and then suddenly there was this other person who had opinions and expectations on how I lived my life, and my selfishness was exposed in ways that I had never seen before. But when I had kids, oh man, it was like my selfishness was on display all the time. Like they wanted me to read them books, the kinds that were stupid. Have you ever read just the first line of each page so you could get through it quicker?
I do not like them in a house. Would you eat them in a box? I do not like them anywhere. All done.
Why do you think kids like being with their grandparents so much? Because they never skip to the end of the book. And they're also never distracted by texting on their phone. Mostly because they don't know how. But why are they so present when all I can think of are the many things I would rather be doing with my time than what my kids want me to do?
Well, what about my hobbies? What about my interests? What about my job? Besides, you can't blame me for working overtime instead of being present with my kids, right? I mean, come on. Kids cost a fortune. Parents, let me tell you something. Your kids would much rather have your presence than the presents that your money buys. Now, don't get me wrong. They'll take your money too. But they would much rather be with you on an adventure in a beat-up Volkswagen van than waiting at home while your Mercedes sits at the office. See, I think this idea of presence is probably a big deal to God, too. I mean, think about it. The Bible tells us that God loved us so much that he came to us. He became present in Jesus. Then when Jesus returned to heaven, what happens? He gave us his presence through the Holy Spirit. Presence matters. Presence is a big deal to God. But presence is more than just being there. Research reveals that kids feel disappointment because of the perceived inaccessibility of one or both parents. That's a strong distinction. That means that being engaged emotionally is just as important as being there physically. Do your kids really believe that you're available to them? Remember earlier in the series I told you I wanted to help you move away from being a quick fix parent? Well, presence over time is the antithesis of the quick fix. So let's get real practical for a moment. Let's talk about some personal sacrifices that might be required. What's something you're currently doing for yourself that's taking time away from your kids? I mean, let's be honest. Many parents are just too busy to be good parents. So before you agree to another activity or responsibility, I encourage you to ask yourself, why am I even saying yes? I mean, as you know, every yes is a no to something else. So are your kids getting your yeses or your nos? Jenna, you're in the game. I used to coach my kids' sports, and on every team there'd be at least one kid whose parents were never at the games. Look, I live in the real world. I know you can't make it to everything, but missing the things that are important to your kids should be the exception rather than the rule. I'd occasionally pull a kid aside and say, I've never met your dad.
Oh, he doesn't like girls' basketball. He's out playing poker with his friends.
First of all, no one likes girls' basketball. Come on, Dad. You don't go to junior high girls' basketball games for your athletic enhancement. I mean, the final score is 3-2. That's not a game.
That's torture. So there are personal sacrifices, but what about career sacrifices? What's something that you're doing at work that you don't need to be doing in order to survive? I had to face this issue several years ago when my daughter was young. I used to travel a lot as a speaker, and my daughter knew the routine. One time I was packing the car, and she got in and locked the doors right behind me.
No, Daddy, please don't go.
God used that moment to reach into my heart and just pull it apart and say, why are you traveling across the country to talk to those kids when you're not at home talking to your own? I stopped traveling. I had to make a career sacrifice. You know why?
Thanks. I'll see you later.
Because I blinked and she turned 16. And I'm gonna blink again and I'll be at her wedding. Remember, your kids are gonna steal your identity. And if you're not present with them now, don't be surprised when they're off with their friends later and you're at home muttering the lyrics to Cats in the Cradle.
I'm gonna be just like you, Dad. I'm gonna be just like you.
You want to know one of the beautiful side effects of being present with your kids? You have the opportunity to provide them a peaceful home.
Dinner's almost ready.
Okay. I don't know how well you remember growing up, but trust me when I say that kids today are at war all day long. And it's not just playing video games.
Come on.
Dinner's ready, guys. They're battling bullies and peer pressure and body image and broken hearts, and they need a shelter from the storm. So, what does a peaceful home look like? Well, it's not about the size of the home and how much space they have to themselves or whether the place is clean all the time. Dinner's ready.
Okay, I'll be right there.
It's about the environment inside the home. It's being somewhere that they know they're loved and cared for, where they can just be who they are. It's boundaries, but not a lot of rules. It's a place where they're free from comparisons to their siblings. See, providing a peaceful home for your kids is no small task, but I can assure you it's so much easier when you've made the choice to be present with them. Presence and peaceful home go hand in hand. And I know right now your kids may feel like this unquenchable black hole that is just ready to suck up all your time. I understand, and I know this is difficult, and I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. Some people don't have a choice. Some of the most amazing parents I know are single parents who work their tails off just to keep a roof over their head. But in today's crazy culture, being busy has become the symbol of significance, a badge of honor, if you will. And parents, please don't sacrifice time with your kids to earn that type of badge.
Dad, we're waiting on you.
I'll be right there. What changes can you make that will enable you to spend more intentional time with your children during these years that will define them for the rest of their lives? Or what is preventing you from having a peaceful shelter that your kids need? Making those changes sends the message, you matter to me, and that's the message we want to send. I am so hungry. Let's eat. This is great. Thank you for making dinner.